Hello. Thank you for this warm welcome. Yes, I will be talking about design feedback, something that all of us dread, but before that, I want to tell you a short story. A real story of how my favorite aunt arrived to visit my new place, my new house. And as it is customary, she came bearing gifts. And the gift that she gave me was around this size folk doll. And imagine my modern house, everything so posh and everything, and this folk doll. And when I looked at it, I felt these emotions running through me, and I finally blurted out, it would be better if she didn't give me this gift at all. Okay, guys, I did not say that, obviously. That would be very mean of me. Of course, I did not say that. I might have thought about it. But what I did say is, thank you. Because I did truly appreciate her good intent. What I knew about her was that those were her passion. She did collect them for many years, and she even had an exhibition of her dolls in her hometown. So it was coming from heart. It just didn't fit my personal taste. And of course, once she left, I put this doll at the bottom of my closet, right? Why am I telling you this? Because I love this metaphor of a gift as a feedback. Because what do you do with gifts? You always welcome it with open hearts. You always thank for it. But it is up to you what you do with this gift later on. And the same goes with feedback. And feedback is obviously something that accompanies us all the time, whether you're a designer, a product manager, but also, business analyst or maybe a developer. At some point, you will have to show your product to other people, stakeholders, clients, and you will receive feedback. And I strongly believe that this is like the most crucial skill you will have in your job. And personally, I used to run a UX design studio for 6 years, and we had this design sessions, feedback sessions on a regular basis with our clients. So not only did I receive feedback, but I also gave feedback to my colleagues, my coworkers. Even now, although I do not run the agency anymore, I still receive a lot of feedback, meaning like hundreds of them every single year, from my students, from my coworkers as well, or participants of my workshops. And you know what? I've been doing it for over 16 years, and I still struggle with it. So I'm not coming here as an expert that has everything figured out. I'm coming here as a rather experienced person who can share some tips and good advices for you. So, let's start with what good feedback really is. And of course, you will find a lot of frameworks on the internet, in the books. You even heard some of frameworks in the previous talk by Maciej. But most of them focused on 4 elements. First step is preparing your colleague for the feedback, is asking whether they have enough space, if they are willing to listen to you. And the point of asking this question is making sure that you have a collaboration, that they are open for a talk. It builds trust within your relationship. Only once you receive the micro yes, you can get to the first step, which is facts. You always start with facts. Facts are things that happened. They are not subjective opinions. They are things that either you saw, are in the project, or someone said something, did something. You cannot really, have an opinion. The point is to, first state the things that just simply happened. Only then you can talk about consequences of this action or this element in the design. So how did they affect your work, or maybe your company, or maybe the business goals, or maybe the end users? And look look that they are talking about consequences rather than, again, opinions. So because you're talking about consequences, you're showing like this shared common goal. We're talking about future, how to change the future rather than, taking a blame. And the last part is once again a question. So you end up always with asking people what are their thoughts, how they are willing to follow through with this problem. Because once again, this question changes the monologue into dialogue and makes it possible for you to collaborate. That's theory, right? I'm pretty sure that none of the feedback that I've ever heard in your life were according to this theory. I'm pretty sure that most of you have heard, at least once in your lifetime, all of these feedbacks. These are the most common answers I get from participants of my design critique masterclass. And let me just check how many, raise your hand if you've heard at least one of them in your lifetime. Okay, so we have established that. So where did it come from? Why do we get these very vague opinions like, for example, I was expecting something else? Not very helpful, by the way. Well, I strongly believe that in many cases it is our own fault. Why? Because we asked the wrong question. Because we asked the question, what do you think about it? Or how do you like it? Or do you have any comments? And we always ask this question hoping for the best, right? So we think we'll get an answer like, it's magnificent, wonderful, you should get a raise. I don't know about you, but I've never heard it. No one ever told me I should get a raise. So, don't forget that the more vague question you ask, the less specific and the more subjective answer you will get. So how you should ask for feedback? Well, first of all, don't start with a question. Start with staging the stage, framing the discussion. Start with reminding your stakeholders what were the goals, what are the personas, what were the business metrics that you were hoping for, Remind them of everything that they should actually know, right? Yes, they should. But it's the same like, when you play a Monopoly game and you think that everyone already knows it and everyone just want to go to the game. But if you don't talk about the rules of the Monopoly in 30 minutes, you will figure out that everyone is playing by a different set of rules. Everyone is basically playing a different game. And the same goes with design critique. If you don't talk about it first, then you will receive very random thoughts, and only some of them will be useful or helpful. The next step is showing what you've done. Not only showing. The worst thing you can do, actually, is just sending an email to your client or your stakeholder with your wireframes or with your project without any explanation. You need to explain why you did what you did. So what was the reasoning behind it? What are the strengths of this project? But also, what are the elements that you're still thinking of? So you can let them know that these are the elements that you're looking for feedback. And it also shows, because you're explaining why you did what you did, it shows that this design is not a result of your personal preferences. It is a result of very deep thought and the time you put into the project and the way you understand the problem. And I remember when I used to run this agency, in this feedback sessions with our clients, when we were explaining our designs, quite often it happened that our client had this disbelief on his face, or her, and they said, oh my God, you really have thought it through. And I'm like, I didn't actually say it, but I always thought it, oh my God, this is what you're paying us for, right? Yeah. So once you've talked about it, when you've explained your decisions, you can ask the question. And as you already know, it cannot be just random question. You need to make them more specific. For example, what is missing here on this page? Or do you think that this solution meets your business goals? Or maybe, what do you think might cause user to leave this page or this screen? And as you can see in these examples, it's very hard to answer this question with, I was expecting something else, right? Or I don't like it. So the idea of asking this type of questions is to make it possible and easy for your stakeholder to refer to these business goals, to refer to user needs or some metrics. But even then, you will receive negative feedback. I kid you not. You will. Why? Why is that we receive negative feedbacks to our projects? Well, yes, it does happen that sometimes stakeholders are simply unreasonable, right? And they're just nitpicking. But it's not that common. Definitely more often, they feel like some of their needs weren't listened to, that their perspective wasn't taken into account in this project. They see something that you are missing. And they just basically want to feel heard, and they want to be part of this process. Sometimes the negative feedback comes from misunderstandings. Actually happens quite often. I remember I once worked on a project. It was an educational project, and we had terms in this project, terms like course, like lesson, like learning screen. We had 6 different names for different elements of the design. And everyone kept mixing it up. Every time we received feedback, someone said, let's say, educational screen, but what they really meant was a module. And the misconceptions, miscommunications just piled up. And the last element is the one that I feel some of the designers forget. Some of your designs may just not be good enough. It does happen that your stakeholders will see something that you haven't thought through, and you need to listen to it. And I'm sure that at some point you felt like your stakeholders are just nitpicking, or they don't understand the grand idea behind your project. You might be happy to hear that you don't have to put every single feedback into your product. Because sometimes this feedback, sometimes this question or suggestion is just an invitation for a discussion, for a conversation. Sometimes your client may be testing you. They want to know if you know what you're talking about. They want to know if you really thought through it. And all you really have to do is talk with them. And what might help you as well, because very often when we receive feedback, we think of it as a failure, as our failure, right? We didn't do it well enough. Someone doesn't like it. But I think it's better to look at it as their success. Because your stakeholders, they want to feel a part of this process. They want to feel that their feedback, their knowledge, their expertise is also in this project. They want to feel needed simply, as all of us do. So let them feel that because of their feedback, the project is much better now. And not only you will have a better product, but you will also have a better relationship with your stakeholders, and that helps a lot. So, how do you respond to feedback? To build this collaborative relationship, it is good to always thank for the feedback first. So the first step is thanking. This is like the equivalent of smiling when you receive a gift. You thank for their time, their input, whatever they said. The second step is repeating after your stakeholders. So you either summarize it or maybe paraphrase it, but the idea is to show that you've listened to them, that you truly understand what they mean. And then you tell them that you will prepare an answer. It may happen that you already have an answer, so if you do, then you can go to it straight away. But in most cases, you don't, because you have to check something, you have to figure something out, maybe you have to design a better solution, maybe you have to talk with your colleague and ask them whether it's feasible at all. So you need to tell your stakeholders when they will receive your answer. And if there's a lot of feedback, for example, you ran some design critic session, or you got an Excel with many tabs, it might be a good idea to analytically, systematically go through every single feedback rather than, think of your emotions only. And the first category that you should put these suggestions to are simple things that need to be implemented. They are, obvious things like missing elements, some oversights, obvious things that you just didn't think of, or maybe because you didn't know the domain as much, you haven't thought through. So simple things that need to be implemented right away. The second category are things that you feel are not good for the project. You feel that you either disagree with them at all, or you feel that they may harm your user, or maybe they're not in accordance with the project goals. These are things that need convincing. You need to prepare some arguments. You need to prepare data. Maybe you even need to research things in order to give the answer. So that requires extra work. And the third element are everything in between, so everything you don't know what to do with. You neither agree nor disagree. Before you make a decision, you need to analyze things, you need to talk to your coworkers, you need to verify project goals, etc., maybe do some research. So these are things that you just need to look at more closely. Once you made a decision, then you decide whether you put it in a to-do section or to convince. But you know what is the best part in this framework? Only one category requires any implementation. Okay, so let's focus on the middle part, right? So the part that needs convincing. And obviously, convincing your stakeholders is the most difficult thing. Especially that very often you feel like the answer is obvious, but it's very hard how to talk about it. It's like, how to explain to your grandmother what blockchain is. And we all know what blockchain is, but how do you really explain it? Not that easy. So you might use one of these 4 tactics. First of them is basically saying it cannot be done, but in a more diplomatic way. Usually you use it when there are some technical obstacles, things like security, or maybe scalability, or maybe simple implementation costs. In most cases, you have to talk about technicalities because your stakeholder doesn't have the technical knowledge. So it's also a way of educating them why this may not work. However, be careful, you cannot use it too often. Because either you will sound like a douche, or they will think that what you really need, what you really want, is a bigger budget. So still a bit of a manipulation. The second tactic, I think, comes most naturally to all of us, because this is looking at the suggestion from users' perspective. So this is what we do, basically. So when you feel like the suggestion given by your stakeholder may harm your user, it's not in accordance with their needs, their goals, their behaviors, this is when you reach for the user advocate. Unfortunately, you cannot just say, I believe our users will not like it. It doesn't work. You need data to back up your opinion. So either some quotes from interviews, maybe some user testing snippets, videos, or maybe some data from analytics, but you need actual data to back your opinion. Sometimes an established design principle will work as well, but it does have to be established, not the one that you've just, thought of. The third tactic is actually my favorite one. This is definitely the one that I always try to use whenever I found it possible. Because this is showing an alternative. So when you feel that the idea behind your stakeholder suggestion is sound, it is not a good solution, but the idea behind it is still valid, then you can think of a better solution. And I always liked using it because not only it showed my stakeholders that I'm listening to them, but it also showed my expertise. I can do something better. And also, it gave me the biggest satisfaction. However, you need to have a better idea. And that's a problem sometimes, because sometimes there are none, right? You just don't know how to do it well. Yeah. And the last one is basically, basically telling your stakeholders that you will look into it in the future. Hoping that they will forget about this idea. It comes in handy, especially when they have lots of ideas and they're like all over the place. And you just hope that they will forget in a month, 2 or 3 about most of them. So yeah, what you actually tell them, of course, is not that let's forget about it, but you actually tell them we need to look at our priorities, we'll put it on the list, etc., etc., we'll get back to it. Of course, don't do it too often either, because if you do it too often, they will feel like you're just, trying to get rid of their ideas. Okay, and the last thing I would strongly advise you is not to be afraid to say, I don't know. I don't know, I have to check it out. I have to look at the data. I have to do some research. I don't know the answer. I feel like many designers are very much afraid of saying, I don't know. They feel like they need to have an answer for everything. And it actually comes off as being, once again, a douche, an arrogant person who always knows the answers, right? Even if they have no arguments for that. So, I strongly believe there are far too many arrogant designers in the world, so don't be one of them. And the last thought that I would like to leave you with is the secret of good feedback, because all of you are here to be a better designer, to build better products. But essentially, even when you now mostly receive feedback, at some point in your life you will start giving feedback as well to your colleagues, to your coworkers. And research shows that people that are masters in giving feedback are also people who ask for the feedback the most. So if you want to be a person that gives good feedback, you need to ask for the feedback on your own as well. So let's go out, don't be afraid of feedback, and good luck. Thank you.